All right. The series continues. We are live here from Imperial Pizza in South Buffalo. Thank you, everyone out there whether you're watching this live on video, whether you're going to listen to the podcast version later on. Thank you for tuning in. Another episode of Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for locking in. I am joined, as this live series continues, by two of my favorite Buffalo Bills beat writers in the game today. To my far left, beat reporter for the Buffalo News, Katherine Fitzgerald. How you doing, Katherine?
Hi, thanks for having me.
And between us, from ESPN.com, Bills beat reporter Alaina Getzenberg. What's going on? How you guys doing?
Good, we're good. We're busy already. It feels like the season's been going on for months, but it's been like 3 or 4 weeks, so we're thriving.
With so many interviews, we just hung out for literally an hour almost. We had some wings. We'll talk about those in a second. And then the show starts, and you're like, "How you doing?" Like, I already know damn well how you guys are doing.
I don't always know how I'm doing, so it's helpful. It's good to check in.
It's true. Our days are busy right now, so sometimes it's like, wait, how am I doing? Like, I got up for practice, and you just go, and it's like, wait, what's happening? So
you both are busy, and I very much appreciate you coming on the show here again, live from Imperial. Also, shout out Rachel Hotmeyer in the house with us from
shout out to Rachel. Big shouts.
Love the girls. Woo!
So, in the support group.
I'm surrounded by talented women tonight. I love this. All right, so before we get into the show, we'll talk some Bills. Give fans an opportunity to know a little bit more about you beyond just the work you do. That's kind of like what we do here on this show. All right, so I'm forgetful, so one of you might have to remind me. What kind of wings did we have? We had medium. We had garlic parm, medium garlic parm.
We had the Loganberry, and then like a medium.
Yeah, I don't know what that
Chevettas.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. That's my go-to one. Did you both get a chance? Did you try the Loganberry barbecue?
Yes.
What did you think of them? Because I got to say this. Shout out my man Matt Perino. Those are his favorite wings. I love Imperial. I could go on and on for days about how much I love this place. Don't like that wing though.
I wouldn't catapult it to my favorite, but I liked it.
Yeah,
I would get it again.
I liked it too. I feel like it was different than like other wings I've had because it's sweeter. And I make a note of not agreeing with Matt Perino on food takes. However, I think this one, I don't know if I can eat a lot of them, but I thought it was like a good change of pace.
Yeah, it's
I think it's a summer wing.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Good one. And good thing about change of pace, like a lot of signature wings, it's like they're really good, but you can only have a couple of them. Like you got to have your regular traditional wings, whatever, and then you can kind of change them up a little bit.
The ones you can eat like dozens of, you know, like just eat them all.
So. Now for both of you, obviously not originally from Buffalo, but now here working and you're going into your third year, both of you covering the Bills. This is your first time for both of you being here at Imperial. Again, I don't want to sound like an infomercial here, but I got to throw a shout out to Imperial, and they're awesome. Just, I don't know, talk about this place. What were your impressions of it? Not just the food, but like the vibe, the layout, everything.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Again, like you said, it was my first time here, which like I'd heard very good things, and just like for some reason, South Buffalo isn't often, sadly, on like my path to things. But like I thought it was a great vibe. It was like a lot going on, cool place to hang. Yeah. Like food was great. Loved the pizza and the wings, so I really liked it. Yeah.
I love sitting outside too. So like I like the options. Yeah. But all good things.
Yeah, the patio is great. I wish that's what I keep saying. There's these great outdoor spaces in Buffalo. I wish you could enjoy them a little longer because this is so nice. So
and for people, again, if you're not watching this live and you're gonna listen later, or if you catch the video later on, we are shooting this live. So anything can happen when we're live. We can't control if somebody walks behind us. We can't control if there's gonna be a bunch of motorcycles and stuff like that behind us. If it happens, it happens. We are here live from Imperial Pizza. All right, so you both come from different markets, and you both have settled into the city, and you are city women now. Like you both live in the city of Buffalo, not the suburbs. Without being intrusive, I don't want people knowing exactly where you live, but like what parts of town are you guys like currently residing in, and what are your impressions on that? Being in the city, which I love that, by the way. I love that you're both in the city.
I'm in Allentown and I really like it. Yeah. I like to like walk outside. There's a lot of stuff like close to me. So it's good vibes. That was like important to me when I was looking for where to move, and like I've been there since I got here. I've just like wanted stuff that I could just like roll out and go to.
Hey, there's so much going on there.
Yeah,
Always is.
yeah.
Always a scene down in Allentown.
Even
I
the
love it.
construction she's
Oh my
been
gosh.
Yeah.
on Allen is a treat for everyone to experience which part of Allen is closed at any given day.
It
So,
is.
Awesome game.
Yeah.
It is. Now, what about you?
I'm in Elmwood Village. I love it. I had to pick really quickly when I moved here where I was gonna live, and I kind of came upon a place and it worked out, and I'd heard good things about Elmwood Village, and like similar to Catherine, I like being able to walk to things, and there's also like the park's not far away, and there's like just a lot nearby, so I really love it.
Yeah, I grew up not far from where you live now. And again, for both of you, you're going into year 3 covering the Buffalo Bills. Talk a little bit. We'll start with you first, Alaina, because like you said, your process was you moved here pretty quickly.
Very quickly.
Just talk about that. You came from the Charlotte Observer.
Mhm.
You were there for 2 years.
Yep.
Just talk about the process of coming to Buffalo and kind of now the difference now that you're a seasoned veteran. Both of you are a seasoned veteran. I'll get the cat too in a second here. But you're like seasoned veterans now of not just even covering the team. Like you've gotten to know the team pretty well and your job pretty well. But also you're starting to get to know the area,
Yeah.
the city, Western New York a little bit, starting to kind of settle into that Buffalonian territory
yes,
here.
exactly.
But talk about the process a little
Yeah.
bit and how it happened for you quickly.
Yeah, it was so fast. I basically got a phone call. I was preparing to go to Panthers training camp. So that's like how soon this was. I was literally packing. The Panthers training camp's also remote. They go to a college in South Carolina. So I was preparing to go to Panthers training camp when I got a phone call asking if I'd be interested in moving to Buffalo. And fast forward like a month and I was moving to Buffalo. My first official day with ESPN was the Friday before week 1 of the 2021 season.
Wow.
So it was all very chaotic. It all just kind of had to happen fast. And I had never been to Buffalo. I'm from Pittsburgh, so not even that far, but I'd never been to Buffalo before. And it was like, okay, go, just figure it out. So
Talk about getting thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
Literally you're here and a week later they're playing not even like camp. It's a regular
No,
season
it
game.
was they were playing a football game against the Steelers, ironically, which was interesting. So it was a lot, but I think now it's been nice to there was like COVID restrictions that first season we both covered the team, and that kind of limits things some. And it was like it's hard to get to know guys when you're talking to them all over Zoom and stuff. But I think like after that panic start, it's like now's the point where it's like, oh, you're right. Like I have lived in Buffalo it'll be 3 years of that's nuts. It has been time, and like I think it's like that comfortability is really like setting in, and like really like feeling comfortable on the beat, and like really feeling like I know the city now. It's nice.
I forgot about that till you reminded me. The first season for both you covering the team with COVID with restrictions, obviously, it was an adjustment. It was weird, I'm sure, for everybody, but especially for somebody coming here who's new to the beat at the time.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're here for a while, you got to know how things work. But for both of you, it was that in itself was an adjustment. And now, Kat, you came from Arizona. You were at the Arizona Republic, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that process, deciding to how did it work out for you to come to Buffalo at the time? Was it a difficult decision? Was it an easy decision?
Most decisions for me are difficult, so it was.
I relate to that.
I think going into I was covering the Cardinals for 3 seasons out there. 2020 was my 3rd season, and before like COVID started that year, I was like, oh, I feel like I've hit my stride. I can't wait for this year. And then obviously everything got totally changed. We're talking to guys over Zoom, and it's my favorite part of reporting is like really getting to know people, picking at stories slowly over time. So it was kind of hard where, things were sort of starting up again. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to finally cover this team that I'm now covering for my 4th year. And then this opportunity came up and I was like, oh, but that sounds really good too. So it was tricky to figure it out. Obviously a lot of differences between the 2 teams, cities, everything. But I had a much easier timeline than Alaina, where I had like a 3 or 4 week jump on her.
Yeah.
I flew out the night before training camp and started at 7:30 the next morning.
Still chaotic.
So those are like your path towards covering the team professionally. On a personal level, coming to Buffalo from different areas, how long do you feel like it took you to get acclimated into just life and kind of culture around here?
I think it was hard because of the circumstances of like, we both started and it was like, work is full go right now.
Yeah.
There were like some spikes during that where like we were still getting COVID tested at the facility weekly. And we were like, well, we love our job, so we don't want to like get sick and not be there for like games and stuff.
That
like when
was
the playoffs
real.
came around, it was very like it was intense then of just like Western New York was seeing more cases and we're like, we don't want to miss a game. So it was kind of hard that first year, I think, of just like learning the team, learning my new newsroom, learning a new city, but also not being able to do it all totally normally.
Right.
So I feel like this last year was a lot more of like, oh, okay, like I live here. Like I know this a little bit more now, but it was just like unusual timing.
I don't want to use a corny term, but I truly believe in a Buffalonian. I say that a lot. It is not necessarily people who are born in Buffalo. It's people who move here and become part of the culture, become part of the city. You're starting to feel that now. You know, again, you guys have been here for a while and you're going into your third season covering the team. You're starting to, not that you never didn't belong, you both belong, obviously, but you know what I mean? You're starting to get that sense of I belong here.
Yeah, well, and I think in our industry too, like you move so much that
Sure.
it's, you know, it's figuring out kind of the nuances of every city where Phoenix was kind of the opposite in some senses of like it was so transient where it was almost weird if someone was from there versus here. I see a similarity to Baltimore where I'm from in the sense of like if people are like, where'd you go to school? It might be high school. I think that's in Pittsburgh too, right? Yeah. So like I think it was nice to have some of those overlaps with cities we're familiar with, but I don't know. Every time I move, I'm always like, oh, moving's hard. So.
Yeah, I think it has been, though. There is something to like Buffalo and like, I don't know, like it's a smaller town. And I mean that in a complimentary way in the
Sure.
sense that like there's some, like there's things you can pick up on. Like people know people. Like how many people have I talked to have been like, oh yeah, I know their ex. And it's like, oh, I know them too. And it's like, that's a cool, I mean, it's an interesting thing about Buffalo, but it's cool because it's like so many people know each other and it feels like a smaller place than it even is. And I think that's unique to anywhere I've lived where it's like even Pittsburgh, like you don't get that quite like where it's like, oh yeah, I know his cousin. And it's like, you do? How? Like, what is that connection? I think that's very Buffalo and there's been a lot, but I think it's been, like she said, like having now like those years under your belt where like COVID's less of a concern and it's more, you're like getting to know a city. Now I feel like I do have like my spots and like things I like to do. And like you get to know like, oh, like I don't say why I don't make any references to kicks the wrong direction, which I did in my second game covering the team. So, you know, you get to know like what is important to a city. And obviously the Bills are very important to this city. And I think seeing the magnitude of that has been a large part of like, to your point, like the Buffalonian thing is like, okay, why is this team so important to the city? And like getting comfortable with that has been part of this as well.
Has that been a surprise to both of you coming and covering different teams before landing here and covering the Bills? Just the, most of the time, it's good how much the fans care about the team and how passionate they are. It means a lot. We were talking about this over some wings here in Imperial. It's like the Bills, if they play bad on Sunday, it's usually going to be a pretty shitty Monday in Buffalo at the office or wherever you work or wherever it may be. Whereas other cities, you know, I lived in Florida for 5 years and I was near the Tampa area. And I'm not, well, I guess I am trying to disrespect Tampa a little bit, but they didn't care. Like 20 minutes after the game, it's like, oh, whatever. I'm going to go on the beach where people take things a little more personally here. I think that part for mostly is good, but, and as, you know, women who are covering this team professionally, it also, you know, that anger or that frustration when the team's not winning or not playing well, it can get pretty ugly too, I would imagine, when you put something out. Either you can write the best story has ever been written, and you're just going to get angry Bills fans because they're so passionate about it. Did that take you both back a little bit? Just how much? I mean, maybe you heard about it before you came here, but just how passionate Bills fans are.
I feel like I got a pretty. Marcel Louis-Jacques, who covered the team for ESPN before me, had given me like a pretty good overview of like what the vibe was and kind of what to expect. I think so. Like, I don't think the level of the passion necessarily surprised me. I think sometimes how it comes out can be surprising at times because I think what's really interesting about Bills fan is like I covered the St. Louis Cardinals for a season, and people in St. Louis know their baseball.
Sure.
And like I kind of compare that to people in Buffalo with the Bills, where like they know what's going on. Well, to an extent, because sometimes Bills fans really like players who are not very good, but that happens in all teams. Like, but they know their football. They know what's going on with the team. They know if someone didn't practice the day before and I get it wrong, they'll remind, you know, like there's like, they know what's going on. So I think maybe the level of that sometimes is like, oh, right, you really like, I messed up and you're quick to correct me or something like that, where it's like, oh, I didn't remember this moment in Bill's history. So I think it is something that we talked about, like you said, the pros and the cons, but the pro to it to me is like the stories and what we do. Like sometimes in sports, it can be like, well, there's so much more important things going on. Like the world is falling apart, like all that stuff. It's like people like what we do, like it does impact people and it is make a difference because they really do care. So that's a nice thing about it.
There are more important things going on in the world than sports,
Yeah.
including a Taylor Swift concert story that I'm going to ask Katherine about in just
Great
a few.
transition.
That was a great transition. That was elite. But all right, so you're covering the Arizona Cardinals, and you're coming from that. What was that fan base like? Because I kind of get an idea what a Pittsburgh fan base would be like. Arizona, I'm clueless.
I compare the Bills fan base more to the Suns than the Cardinals by like far. Where
Okay.
like the Suns, that means a little more to the city. They've been there longer.
Sure.
They kind of had some similar trajectories. I even think, well, they're not there anymore. Like some of the like coach and GM tangents were similar to how I saw Brandon and Sean work together. But they were really bad for a while, the Suns. And but there were still people who cared so much about them. And then they had that run to the finals was my last week at the Republic, actually.
That's right. I remember now.
And it was really cool kind of seeing how that impacted the city. So like I saw a bit more crossover there. But as far as kind of some of Alaina's points, I think some of it was just it takes time to earn trust of your readers. And I think there were some times early on where like, I don't know, like the first game we covered, the offensive line was holding a bunch and we would say that and people would be like, you're not from here, go home. Or like, I got a lot of go back to Arizona and I was like, I'm from Baltimore. Like but it was also like, I know you're upset that the offensive line is getting a lot of penalties today, but I'm just telling you that happened. This just is a fact.
Sometimes Bills fans don't like objectivity.
They don't like when you point out Josh Allen isn't playing well,
right?
Which I understand. I
Yes.
do understand. That's
But
something I
think
get. Yeah.
There's an extra layer to
Yes.
that when you are a newcomer.
Right.
I would also say sometimes for us there was an extra layer of like, you are a new woman in town who I
Sure.
don't know who you are. Don't say Josh Allen threw that interception,
Yeah.
even if the stat sheet says it. Like
Right.
I
Which
can't
is
help
part
that.
of being a fan too. Like
Yes.
I think, like
Yeah.
like there is like that. That's what it is, and like, but there is some. You get some back and forth when you point out things aren't going well.
But it's passion for sure. But
Yeah.
I think it also, like when we were talking about it showing up in funny ways, like, I mean, I didn't realize how many text messages from my landlord would end in "Go Bills," like
Oh my God.
stuff like that, where it's like I knew for sure, like I think everyone who follows the NFL knows how passionate this fan base is, but the way it like seeps into everyday
Yeah.
life of like I don't know, like I'll go to get my hair cut and I'm looking at a picture of Dawson Knox from someone like on their dresser at the hair salon.
oh my
and,
gosh,
like,
you go to the grocery store and it's like
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs is looking at me. And I'm like, I just left him. What's he doing here?
Yeah.
It's like, no, he's advertising potato chips. So.
Yeah, that is hilarious. You know, I talked about being a shitty Monday when the Bills will lose on a Sunday. Conversely, game days or even leading up to an important game, this town is, and that's one thing, probably my favorite thing about living in Florida for 5 years was when you wore something Bills, like to say Walmart or Publix
Yeah.
or wherever, you'd hear "Go Bills," and it kind of meant more. Whereas here in Buffalo, everybody's got Bills stuff, no matter where you go. But that's also really cool. It really is a sea of blue and red and
Yeah.
white and colors leading up to game day. All right, so before we talk about the Bills specifically, kind of backtrack a little bit. So you guys are from two areas, at least anyway, that have always fascinated me: cities, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. We could probably spend a lot of time talking about a lot of the similarities between the two. Can you think of like a big difference? Like, what's a big difference between Pittsburgh and Buffalo or Baltimore area in Buffalo? Is there it?
No, I laughed because the first one I thought it was accents. Every now and then my Baltimore accent will slip out, and
Yeah.
It's so good. I highly recommend getting her to say something with like an O in it.
yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna try to think of a better one though. That's a good question because I think more often to me I drew on the similarities when I was making the decision.
Sure.
I think for me, I can go first. One thing about Pittsburgh and Buffalo that are certainly different, and I mean, the snow is an obvious one, whereas like it's cold in both, but like the snow here compared to Pittsburgh is drastic. Thank you, lake effect. But I do think one thing that's a little different is this sounds bad. I think there's a little bit like Pittsburgh is a little more broken up into neighborhoods. I think like there's different neighborhoods that have different vibes to them, where like I grew up in the North Hills and that's like more suburban and like that kind of thing. But then there's areas within downtown that are like Squirrel Hill's a specific area and like Oakland's a specific, like I think there's very clear neighborhoods there and there's cohesion there too. But Buffalo to me, like while there are neighborhoods and like there's South Buffalo and there's North Buffalo, but I feel like they've never felt like that different. You know, like there's to me not like as sharp, like I don't know, it's all felt like one thing to me. Like when I was like, oh, are you in this area? This, I'm like, they're all kind of similar. Like they all have like, I don't know, the same vibe to me.
Yeah.
I was listening so hard, I didn't really think of a good one. I'm an active listener.
Maybe there's not any real.
They really like seafood
Radical.
in
Yeah, I was
Baltimore.
gonna say I won't eat crabs here.
Yes. No crab
Like,
cakes can be eaten in Buffalo.
I am a snob when it comes to that. I don't know. I'm gonna keep pondering this one. It's and in like 2 days I'll think of something good.
All right, that's fair enough. Training camp just concluded in Rochester.
Yes.
How do you feel about training camp? Obviously, it's your job. Like, did you both stay in the dorms, or did you commute, or was it kind of a
We
combination?
deeply chronicled our dorm time.
Yeah, did you know?
We did some matching outfits. We had
I
theme
saw the bar.
days.
I saw some of them.
That was the
was
first
all
one.
hers. Miss Fitzgerald over here was the forced me to do different themed days, and I tagged along, but they were all her
I saw
ideas.
some.
So we did Barbie Day, we
I
had
love a
Twin
theme.
Day.
I saw Barbie Day.
Yeah.
We wore all black for the last day as we were
I saw that too.
missing training camp. We don't miss training camp.
Do you
I-
miss training camp? That's kind of what I'm
there
getting
are
at.
elements of it that I like. And I mean, we stay in the dorms the whole time.
Okay.
We'll come home for like the off days, but I think there is something to like having everything right there, roll up to the press conference in the morning that I can see like from my dorm window. But I lean in, I bring a dry erase board where people can leave a quote of the day, a little message. I have some friendship bracelets. I brought my Barbie comforter and shark sheets because I was like, these are fun. But it's kind of like, I don't know, if we're going to be there, might as well make the most of it.
Yeah.
It felt so much shorter this year. It was like 3 days shorter or whatever, but it felt like a week shorter. But we have a fun time of like, I don't think we repeated any restaurants this year, or within this camp.
Yeah. There is something to it where you spend a lot of time with the beat, which has its pros and cons, but mostly pros. Like I think you do get to like spend time around more people. It's also like, there's parts of training camp I do miss now that I said that so strongly.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a more casual vibe to it. Like when even like
the families.
from us from a work perspective.
What
it's
about
just, like,
the players?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's like you're able to build relationships better because you're like able to go up to guys and like she said, they're there with their families after practice. You could just be like, "Hi, I'm Alaina. Your husband. I went up to Deion Dawkins' mom and was like, your son's excellent. Like, thank you so much for making someone who like is so kind and like so willing to like help other people. Like he's always great to talk to. So like it's things like that you can only do at camp where like the families are around, the players are just kind of being looser with it. They're there and like you can see we saw Steph coming out of the locker room on the day they lost power and we chatted with him and like it's stuff
about
like
making
that.
s'mores.
Yeah,
like
about tenting up. So like and everyone camping it didn't have to happen. The power came back on, but there were plans for a camp out at Fisher. So there's perks to it, but for me, I'm not at home. You're out of your element a little bit. So it's got pros and cons.
the length is good. If it were a little bit longer, we'd be
There'd
a
be
little
more
angsty.
problems. Yeah.
And then I think I like the fan aspect too of like, I love my job. I love what I do, but it is work. And I think sometimes it's easy to get a little too like, I'm focused on like what I'm watching and I forget like the awe of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes when it's like, I don't know, it's cool to see those moments with like kids meeting players and
It's
stuff like
awesome.
that. Yeah. To be like, oh yeah, like I still love all of this, even if some days it's more like oh my gosh, I got to knock out these interviews and transcribe this. And I blinked for 1 second and now I don't know what I'm going to write about that play. And like that anxiety sometimes, but instead to be like, oh, it's cool that we're here and watching something that's evolving.
Yeah.
I like it from a fan perspective because it feels like anywhere in the bleachers. It's not really a bad seat in the house because it's so intimate and small.
Yeah.
So for a fan, they could see everything. And then they go back and have a podcast and think they know what they're talking about because they watched it a couple practices. I'm talking about myself.
Everyone's got perspective. We appreciate
No,
it. Everyone's got good view. It is a cool, that is, because like when we have big practices here now, where it's like, we're on a same schedule in terms of the number of practices and the timing as camp. So it feels a little similar, but you're missing like the shouts when like the guys run out. Like it's just like us standing there. You know, it does happen. And then you get to see them what practice is like. Like I think that is really cool.
From a content level, both of you, your stock goes way up now because you're at practice that the fans can't watch. So now fans are literally dependent on the media. Whereas when we're in Rochester, you can both report on things of observations that you're seeing. It's like fans can see at least some of them anyway. So I feel like your stock goes through the roof this time of year.
Well, maybe some.
I thought I
was just gonna say some perspective that maybe is like good to know is like we can't report as much as we normally would, which like I think it's good for people to know though. It's like when you're at a training camp practice in Rochester, we're normally like able to report there are some restrictions on what we can report, which I think like people maybe don't even know. So like I think it's good to like there's a little more, you know, it's a little different, but I understand what you're saying. Like there is a different view we get now that like if something happens, everyone with a phone is also not seeing it.
And maybe I thought maybe that was like a diminishing statement because there might be a couple thousand people at camp, but there's hundreds of thousands of Bills fans that aren't at camp that want to see what's going on every day.
To Alaina's point, there were like some really cool moments where we would tweet it like about it, and people would be like, "Show the video," and we're like, "Well, we can't take it, but someone else can. You'll see it soon, we promise." But the bigger difference to me, I think like so much of training camp stuff is a really short shelf life of it's like who looked like what today. And by tomorrow, it's already over. And both of us lean a little more towards like favoring longer reporting. Like I really love to do features, in-depth stuff. And so that's hard to carve out during camp. There's not enough time. And it gets buried. So I think that's the bigger part of like this transition back to the season is like, okay, I talked to my editor today about like, here are some long things I want to work on, but like, I need time to do it, but also this is when that time of year kind of starts, even though it's obviously going to be busy.
You find it a little bit easier to have conversations and talk to players who are in camp too. And this is me assuming, let me know if I'm right. In part because you're optimistic. The season hasn't started yet. You know, there's not a lot of wear and tear on you as much, at least anyway, physically, emotionally, you're optimistic about the season starting. Whereas, you know, week 9, they've got a big game at Cincinnati. If they lose, they fall 2 games back in the division or something like that. The players might be a little more testy. I mean, they're still gonna, they know it's part of the job for both of you, but you know what I mean? It's just the vibe and the environment at camp, I would think, with players. Is it like
some of it is also just like, hey, how was your summer? You got engaged. Congratulations. You went to Greece. Versus week 9, it's like, hey, I saw you yesterday. Here I am again. But a lot of it, I don't know. I love that kind of casual rapport building of like, hey, we're all humans who we're happy to have July away from the NFL for a little bit. And now we're back. What did you do with your time? Heard some really cool travel stories.
Yeah, it is easier though, to your point too, like, and she was saying like the relationship building is a part of it. So like, it's easier to do that when the pressure of the season isn't upon us yet. I think there's more time then, and there's more like, oh yeah, let's chat. But versus like, no, I have to go watch film. We're playing the Chiefs tomorrow. It's like
locker room's closed.
Get out of there. Like we got to work. So yeah, there is definitely a flexibility to it that is very nice, and it helps some. And also like that stuff, like the relationship building pays off down the road once things get, like, as you said, like stressed and they before a game they got to win. It's like, oh, we had talked about this a while ago, just wanted to follow up. Like that becomes a lot easier.
We are live here from Imperial Pizza. I'm with Alaina Getzenberg from ESPN.com, Katherine Fitzgerald from the Buffalo News. We were talking about training camp right before the break here. One more camp question. Actually, maybe 2. I might be lying. Stefon Diggs, how important was it as a reporter for him to talk on the first day of camp and kind of put that behind him? Because I feel like a lot of fans, not all fans, but there was definitely a percentage of fans that's all they really wanted to hear about. It's all they wanted to read about. It's all they wanted to see. It's all they wanted to hear about was Stefon Diggs. I mean, he was obviously going to go to camp, but is he going to talk? Is he going to talk? And he did, and I thought it was a great sit-down press conference that he had as well. Does it matter to you as a reporter that he gets it out of the way on day one?
Well, like if we're writing about people, we want to include their voice.
Sure.
And I think sometimes that comes across as like, I don't know, needy, like please talk to me. But it's more like, if I'm going to be fair to you, I want your perspective in this. Because there's so much stuff that we don't know. And that applies to any situation, not just Steph coming into camp, but it was more kind of just like, hey man, like, let's hear what you're thinking. It was, and I think that's, to your point, it was kind of, I don't know, a little cathartic of just like, okay, now we all know back to camp. Like, yeah, because I don't know. It's so valuable for us of these are real people we're writing about every day. We don't want to assume what they're thinking, don't want to not include them if they're comfortable talking. So just kind of, give people their voices in the stories that are about them.
I was really happy to see him talk. I thought it was great. And I went to 5 practices, and he's a leader. You could just see it. You know what I mean? His
Also, he's funny.
communication,
Like, we enjoy his press
Yeah.
conferences.
his intensity. I mean, one practice he beat Taron Johnson for a little short slant touchdown goal line. He kicked the ball.
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome. So you could just tell he's like in midseason form. He's ready to go.
Yes, Steph lets you know if he beats you on a route. Yeah, you know problems there.
Or if he even just feels he did.
Yeah,
or like,
yeah.
I noticed him and Kyrie Elam were doing a lot of jawing throughout camp. That's something that I kind of picked
They
up
love
on.
each other.
we got a big tag team scoop of the fight between them was Steph ran over to say, I love you, Kyer. And Kyer said, I love you too, Steph.
That's per Kyer
per-
Elam. Yeah.
That is what we were told. Y'all can interpret that as you may. But that's, again, like, you at least ask.
Yeah.
And they could be like, I don't want to talk about it. Here's what happened. We said, I love you. Like, but now it's like, we know what you at least want to say.
Yeah.
Look at that. Some Bills news here
Yeah.
on Talking Buffalo. One guy I do want to ask about, because whether you're covering the Bills or you're covering the Cardinals or covering the Carolina Panthers, whatever, any camp, there's always a I don't want to even say Cinderella player, but there sort of is. Somebody who seemingly comes out of nowhere, people don't really put in the mix, but then they just perform really well and they look good and they kind of play themselves, and at least the fans talking about the potential with him. I said I don't want to say Cinderella because Danny Isabella is not an undrafted free agent off the street.
He didn't come out of nowhere. He came out of Arizona.
Yes, he's a second-round draft pick, so it's not like he's some unknown that no one's ever heard of. So that's why I'm kind of careful with my terminology when saying that. But anyway, it seems to me since signing Harry started a little bit, wasn't too noticeable, but it seems like he's really picked up steam towards the end of camp. He looked good against the Colts. I read that he's had a couple really good practices during the week too. Do you feel like he's put himself in a position, because it seems to me if the Bills were to keep 6 receivers, where's his path? And if they're going to keep Justin Shorter, who's a big guy, a 5th-round rookie, like him on special teams, they want to develop him. If they're only going to keep 6, and they haven't historically really ever kept 7 receivers, it's like, where's his path? Is it Khalil Shakir? That's the only person I can come up with where his path would be through him. But I guess what I'm asking is, first and foremost, do you think he has a realistic chance to make the team? Because he seems to be a guy that a lot of fans are talking about right now.
I think he has a chance, but I think, like you said, it is not no one making. There are so many locks on this roster. Like, with the 3 of us could go through right now and almost agree on everyone, which tells you that, like, there's not a lot of flexibility here. We're not working with a lot of spots, and like you said, they usually keep 6, so it seems like it will be 6. He, to me, like, to make this roster, he's got to almost win the return job, because he really compete with Deontay Hardy at it, because they need him to have a role. You're not going to just make this roster and be like, because you looked good at wide receiver. That's just not how you're going to make this roster. So to me, he has to show that he can do well in the return game well enough that they're like, we need to keep him around. And it's going to be really hard. Like you said, I don't know if right now I see them cutting Justin Shorter. Right now I don't see them cutting Khalil Shakir. So then it's like, what are we? But he's fighting for it, which I think Sean McDermott talked about him today. And he was like, he's pleasantly, gave the vibe of being pleasantly surprised. And it's like, you never know with those guys. He could go off in this preseason game Saturday and do some damage. And then, it's like these other guys now are in a tougher spot. So a chance, but it's far from a lock to me or anything like that.
It's been fun for me. I covered him when he was drafted to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And 2 years there, we overlapped. So when he showed up, I was like, hey, I dyed my hair and we haven't seen each other in 2 years, but I'm Katherine. Good to see you again. And, right away he was like, oh my gosh. So we talked early on in camp. They actually there's 3 former Cardinals wide receivers in this group with Trent Sherfield and Keyshawn Johnson. So he was talking about being back with them and everything, but it was cool for me outside of just what Alaina was talking about, what we've seen on the field, to hear the new ways he's studying now, the way he's approaching the mental aspects of the game, where he was pretty candid of there are things my rookie year that I couldn't get right because I was putting too much pressure on myself, and now I'm doing it this way. And Trent Sherfield, who's known him since he was a rookie, backed up that stuff separately, where he was he is so fast on the field. And Trent was kind of sometimes he was also so fast overthinking things, but now you see him playing looser, playing more free. Like when they say the game slows down, like this is a case for Andy where it really did. And so for me, it's been cool to see that growth over time. And I think that's a really big advantage. Alaina mentioned what Sean was saying, but Sean, Ken Dorsey, so complimentary of him.
Josh too.
Josh too, and in ways that are not just like your classic camp, I don't know, cliches. Like there were details to it that it was like he's made a big impression in what, 3 weeks? Less?
Yeah. So
one more Bills question here. I want to talk about a player. So everyone's been talking about middle linebacker from day one at camp, and it was going to be this 3-man competition between Dodson and Bernard and Spector. Spector kind of flamed out. He had one day with the ones, and then that was it for him. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. Then it felt like it was becoming a 2-man race. Then, of course, Bernard gets hurt. I kind of felt like going into camp, like the Bills wanted Bernard to win. They weren't going to hand him anything, but they wanted him to be the guy to win the job. Anyway, he's hurt now. Dodson started, and he has been starting for most of them. But now, and I guess we'll find out more on Saturday, but it seems like A.J. Klein is kind of, I've read about today, or heard today, post-practice reports that he looked good, made a handful of good plays. Has he played his way into the mix? I mean, it is somebody who has played middle linebacker for the Bills before, and somebody that Sean McDermott knows well. Do you feel like at this point he's played his way into that competition?
It's interesting because I feel like there's so much context to that mix where you mentioned there's all these injuries now.
Yeah.
They do value that veteran perspective that he brings, but that's so much bigger now that Terrell Bernard, I mean, is still, he was working to the side, but still is a little ways off from playing on the field again. So I think it's just like a different calculus than it was even 1 week ago.
Yeah, to me, it's almost like you say play his way into the job. The job almost like
default
came to AJ Klein. And I don't
Good
mean
point.
that in a way that's like AJ Klein is a solid football player.
Sure.
And I think it's a key thing here is you know exactly what you're getting from him. And that's a positive because Sean McDermott has known AJ Klein for a very long, not to age AJ Klein. I mean, he's 32. They've known him since the Carolina days. He knows that was one of the guys coming from Carolina. I was like, well, if AJ Klein's around, like I've covered, there's roots that I've covered people who played with him. So it's almost like the job because of Terrell's injury and because Balin mispracticed yesterday, but just hasn't kind of played up to the job, I guess, or hasn't got the opportunities for whatever reason. It's almost come to AJ Klein and he's taken advantage of it. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do on Saturday. I still think Tyrell it's almost his job to lose. Like, I think in an ideal world, he grasps it, he goes up and he gets it at this point with Terrell's injury. But AJ Klein has certainly worked his way into the mix.
It's just crazy how quickly things can change from the start of camp.
Yeah.
AJ Klein, the start of camp was complete insurance, practice squad. Insurance.
I didn't have him making my 53.
Right.
I didn't think he was there. Now he's on it for
Change,
sure.
Yeah.
Isabella signs and he's going to have a cup of coffee before he goes his way. Now he's in the mix. There's just Latavius Murray maybe was going to make the team. He's going to be practice squad guy. Now he might be the second running back.
He might play tight end. Every time I look at him,
He's a
I'm
big dude,
what
man.
position are you playing again? What are you doing?
One of the things I noticed most about the whole entire camp practice that I went to was just how much bigger Latavius Murray is than James Cook.
I think he grew during camp.
Yeah, he's such a big guy. Whenever I'm like, are you with that position group? Because all the running backs are on the shorter end, understandably, and love the shorter people on this roster because I identify with them. But he's a big dude.
By the way, I should have said this literally at the beginning. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, these are two of the best Twitter followers of anybody in Buffalo. All right. Much respect to Sal and Tyler, Tim, and all these guys. You guys pale in comparison to these two on Twitter. I absolutely love the banner. It's awesome.
We have fun.
I feel like you've become legendary. On Twitter, I've sent DMs to your Josh Barnett so many times, laughing about something. And one of them, this is not a laugh about a DM. This is actually a serious question because I found this really interesting. So people who don't know this, and I wanted to save this for now to ask you. You went to a Taylor Swift concert.
I did.
And you wrote about it. And I thought it was an amazing piece.
Thank
you. It
you.
came out right when the stuff with Stefan was happening.
Yes,
so
it did.
It kind of got lost in the shuffle. So maybe some people didn't see it. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, by the way. But tell people right now who are watching or listening a little bit about this process. What gave you the idea to do the story and just kind of like your experience of going to a Taylor Swift concert?
So the story was a bit of a surprise. I was in Detroit at my best friend's house getting ready the day of the concert. think I was, starting to pick out like some jewelry, stuff like that, drying my hair. And my editor, Josh, texts me, hey, Features wants to know if you'll write about going to Taylor Swift. And I was like, at first I was like, I don't want to like interview people outside. Like, I don't want this to be a reported story of like I'm using my time at the concert to like fact check things.
Right.
So I was like, if I can do it personal essay style, I'm interested, but I also like, I'm going to enjoy this concert and that's my priority above work. Like I was clear about that from the jump. But it was something, she's my favorite artist. I've listened to her since high school. A lot of like her songs match up with different chapters of my life. So it was fun. I do on occasion like writing more personal things, and that was one that just felt right. So it was cool. It was very out of my wheelhouse, different than like your Friday injury report. Sent versions of it to my mom, to Alaina, to a couple other friends to be like, is this too much of my diary on the internet? They did cut some parts of it, which I was bummed about. Just because it was long, but it was
DM her for
for Katherine's version.
Yeah, for Katherine's version.
But it was cool to write, and I think especially just to, I don't know, a lot of ways I process things are through writing. So to apply that to something in my life was a cool change of pace.
She's reached that bucket list part of my life for me to go see one of her shows. I mean, every time I see a story.
Hey, well, if you get 3 tickets,
we'll go with you because I haven't gone either, and I really want to go. So
she's become so big that it's almost like, and I love her music too.
Yeah.
But just it's almost like a social status going to one of her concerts. Like you always see like on Twitter, celebrities always in the crowd at her shows. It's almost like kind of some social standing at
Shouts
this
out
point.
Flavor Flav. He went to the first concert the same night I was there in Detroit, and now he's going all the time.
I got a couple questions that we're going to finish up with.
Okay.
Kind of like we do as most shows, just going to give fans an opportunity to know a little bit more about you. Before that, though, I do want to ask you, not counting yourself, and you can't say Rachel either, or a couple of like your favorite people over your first few years being here in Buffalo, like working alongside with that you got to know.
Oh, then I go into their egos, though. We don't want to compliment some of these people.
That's fair.
I don't know. We're big Joe B fans at The Athletic. We'll love Joe to death.
It was so helpful having Jay and Mark from the Jump and the Buffalo News.
Sure.
Like, make sure before I even started, Mark was like, hey, every year I write one sentence about all the guys showing up to training camp. Instead, I wrote 3 to send to you. So when you come here, like I was not on the Buffalo News payroll yet. And he and Jay both right away, like made sure, whether it was like Mark drove me to work for the first few weeks because I didn't have my car out here yet. Jay made sure like anything I needed, whether it was about the team, about the city, stuff like that. We've got Ryan in the mix now too. So it's nice to have a group there where it's like, we can kind of teamwork at practice as well. So that's been really important.
Yeah, and that's a really crappy question for me to ask.
No.
It's like, this is a smaller market and there's only so many people. Like,
I'll give Joe
you don't say him.
No, I'll give Joe an extended shout out because that made me think about it, because he is someone like me being on the beat by myself. I kind of had to like just figure it out as I went a little bit. And Joe has Tim Graham, of course, but like he's there a lot of times by himself as well at practice, and he had no problem. Like every time I had a question, he'll like answer it, or even like Buffalo things. I was like, where am I supposed to be getting pizza? Where am I supposed to be like doing this? Always able to answer. And there's other people who've done that too. Like,
sure.
This is why we're not shouting out Matt Beauvais, who we love, because he didn't tell us about a sushi deal until yesterday.
So we hate him.
So
whatever, Matt Beauvais. No,
Matt, if you're listening, let's go get wasabi soon. Actually, we're just kidding.
Yeah, that's the cool thing is like I think it's overall there's a lot of people in that like media room who like help, but even like outside that, like I have found it to be like there's that friendly
is it
vibe,
true?
but it's true.
Is it true that Joe B shows up to the stadium as early as
those pictures are real? That's not AI.
And not Photoshop.
It's my favorite bit because
I know it is.
I love to take. He will never let me take a picture of him, and he's always like, no pictures. And I'm like, the people want to see Joe. So if you want to see Joe, reply to my tweets and ask for him, because maybe that'll get him to post. It works. It's effective. We're here for it. So he does get there scarily early, and I give him so much crap for it. Because
the best was one time when he tweeted, I'm at the stadium. I was in a different state. I was in Detroit at the airport, coming back from a wedding on a red eye. I think I was still wearing glow stick bracelets from the wedding, but I made it to the game, wrote the best story of my life about the Bills' big win over Washington football team. But like when he arrived at the stadium, I was still on a layover I was in Michigan. And I was like, well,
It's scary. He needs to, he enjoys it though. He's got his process. We give him crap for it, which is well deserved.
I love Joe. He's super chill. He's a super chill guy, and he's so talented.
The
He's
chillest.
so good at what he does.
Yes.
I love Joe. All right, let me ask you a couple questions here. We'll get you out. This is for both of you, so you'll both answer. A place that you always wanted to visit, but you never made it to.
Oh, like in the whole world?
Sure. Somewhere where you wanted to go to, but you have never been to. Some city, anywhere.
I want to go to Ireland at some point.
Yeah.
Very Irish, so I think that'll be cool.
The land of the Fitzgeralds.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. Oh, I've never been to Hawaii, and I feel like that's when I went to school in California, which is like scarily close flight to Hawaii, and to have never gone. So that's always, that's got to be high up there for me, and obviously praying for everything happening there right now. But in the future, would love to make that happen.
Sure. Favorite TV shows growing up?
Rocket Power.
Oh, I'm going to say we recently check out Matt Beauvais. Speaking of Matt Beauvais' Twitter, because he and Katherine Fitzgerald came up with this lovely Arthur video. And Arthur,
I saw it.
Yes, go check it out if you have not. With Josh Allen, makes a surprise appearance. Spoiler alert! Very well, we're seeing it. So good. Anyway, Arthur was one of my favorite shows.
That's a really good one too. Yeah, big Arthur fan.
What, if anything, do you miss most from your childhood? What do you miss most about being young? Whether it's being a little kid, I'll give you up to your like mid-teenage years. So anything
most
that
of them
or
are just
before.
like not paying for things,
That's got to be a lot of it.
No bills.
not setting my own appointments.
That's
I'll give a real one.
I think I like miss. This is gonna be a little sweet and corny. I kind of miss being like as close to my family as I was then, because I could wake up and my parents were there, and I'm really close with my sister. So like that was something that I think you can't really appreciate as much in the moment. But now I'm like, oh, that was really nice. I was so, because when now I'm far, I don't have any family in Buffalo, and everyone's been great and friends. But you miss the family thing too.
That's tough living in a city without family.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm making my siblings visit in October. They're all coming together. So
watch out, Buffalo. The Fitzgeralds are coming.
All four. So I think for me, kind of similar. I miss living walking distance from friends, whether that was my neighborhood growing up where we would bike a bunch, college where it's like down the hall. That's why I do like the dorm, because it's like I finish writing, I walk down the hall, I knock on Alaina's door. She doesn't tell me to come in, but I open the door and say, okay, I'm ready for dinner right now.
Please know that she only came to my room like maybe 2 or 3 times, and I always had to knock on her door for visits. So I feel like the record should reflect that.
We were next door to each other for part of it. So
I just had to get the record straight,
Yeah. But
Maybe you guys should have your own reality show.
No, people don't need to see that.
it'd be a lot of me staring at my ceiling. Ceiling time.
There's some things that we have heard, people have said. Von Miller said if we ever got a podcast, he would come on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
I don't
holding
think that's
him to
going to
it.
happen, but us having a podcast, I believe Von would do it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
All right, 2 more questions here. So again, we just had some really good wings and pizza here at Imperial Pizza. What's a food that you just flat out refuse to eat, even no matter how much someone might prod you, like, you gotta try this is pretty good or something? Is there a type of food or any type of food at all that like you will not have, no matter what? Like you're like, I'm not having that.
There are ones I don't prefer, but I think there's almost nothing that I will for sure not eat. But I think that was also like I traveled a lot, where it was sometimes like I don't want to like be rude and not eat something. But my kind of like boring, I'm not going to pick it out for myself literally ever, is I just don't really like yogurt.
Okay.
What? I didn't know that.
You're a monster.
Yeah, what is that?
There's more for you guys at the breakfast buffet
You don't
now.
like yogurt? Any kind of yogurt?
I love so many foods. I thought it was fine to have
Wow,
one.
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It's something about the texture, but I like many other, like, I don't know.
No, that's fascinating. It's
I
like
like
you're allowed
frozen
to.
yogurt. I like desserts. I like Italian ice. I don't know. The only times I really eat it, I put in like so many Oreos and strawberries that it's more of like it's no longer the main attraction.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm pickier than her. I'm way beyond just yogurt. I like anything with like legs. Like I don't do that.
Spiders.
What?
You
No.
eat crabs
Oh, I like crabs. I take that
and
back.
shrimp.
Okay, I take it all back.
Listen, fact checking is important, everyone.
I don't like bugs. I won't do. I'm not a big lamb person. I don't really like the taste. So that kind of area. What?
Do you know how many animals have legs?
I did the legs thing. I took that back. I didn't mean it. I meant things with like
Chickens. You just ate chicken wings.
I meant like no, like with legs you eat.
No,
like frog
okay.
legs, like
Oh,
bugs.
okay,
I was more
legs
thinking.
as a
yeah.
yeah. No, I've
But I'm pretty open to. There's very few things that I won't try.
That's
I'll
fair.
say that. I don't have like a weird one like yogurt.
but I've eaten tarantulas. So like it balances out.
No, thank you.
Life is about balance, you guys.
We're all like, okay, yeah.
All right, last question for you both here. And of course, obviously, I appreciate your time very much. Name or not name, if you could spend one day with any celebrity right now,
Oh,
who would
Did
it
you
be?
say day or date?
day.
Day.
Okay. Well, they're very different
Day.
questions.
They are very different questions. No, if you could spend a
Oh.
full day with any celebrity that you wanted to, whatever field it may be, for whatever reason.
Okay, I know the answer to this because right now I'm still a very big F1 fan. I'm trying not to tweet about it too much, but it's becoming more onto my social media platforms. But right now, I think it would have to be Lewis Hamilton because he's just so cool and like he does a lot of things that I really believe in and fights for. So I think and owns a plane. So I think we could do some really we could go somewhere cool. We could vibe. Like I think it'd be a great time.
Okay.
Thinking really hard.
By the way, proof that I did not spoil these questions.
Yeah,
to my
well,
guests
well,
tonight. These are
and when
they're
I-
hearing these just as you are.
When I said that every decision is hard for me.
We're
Like,
not actually doing this.
Taylor Swift is up there because then I could go to her show again probably.
Oh yeah. You guys
Um,
say in the cool mosh pit area.
I'm trying to think like what I would really like to do more than like the person itself is just like I want to be with celebrities on Halloween because I love they have so much money that they get to do really cool costumes.
That's
and
fair.
I just like I would be so much better at Halloween if I had that access.
There you go. Gee,
You
yeah.
I got at it there. Can't
Yeah.
even top that.
You can't beat that.
Make sure you follow both of these ladies on Twitter at, I want to be sure to get this right, A Getzenburg for
It's a lot of
Alaina,
ease. A lot of ease in there.
and at KFitz134. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Again, two of my favorite people, not just on Twitter, two of my favorite Buffalo Bills reporters as well. I'm very appreciative of both of you. Again, you're going on the road, going to Pittsburgh tomorrow. Well, most
Yep.
people will be listening to this. You'll be on your way there today. Again,
Headed
shout
to the
out one more
412.
time to Rachel
Woo!
in the house.
yeah.
And of course, thank you one more time, Imperial Pizza. This is so awesome. The food's great. The vibe's great. Appreciate you letting us do this show here as
Mhm.
well. So for Alaina, for Kat, talk to you soon. Take care.